What made Batman the Animated Series just electrifying is that it was unlike anything else we'd ever seen on TV before, and that's what made it just so compelling.
The thing about the Batman Animated Series is that it took this world and it took it seriously without taking itself too seriously. So you had a world that you could believe in.
Early on, there were a lot of discussions about the direction of the series, and I would speak at length with Bruce about where he wanted the show to go and how he felt Batman should act and speak.
Initially, my own personal idea of Batman is quite a bit different than the way he is actually in Batman the Animated Series. Just the logistics of telling a story for television in a film medium, and a lot of the ideas that I had for Batman I knew really wouldn't work for a cartoon.
What Bruce and I both found a meeting of the minds on once we got to know each other and we started talking about what we wanted to do with the series, we both were interested in telling real stories. Telling mini movies is the way we were referring to them at the time. We didn't want it to have a typical Saturday morning type approach to the show.
They really knew the comics industry, and they knew Batman's history, and they knew all of the different years and different styles that went into making these characters what they were, and that's why the Batman Animated Series worked so well.
When I first saw Batman the Animated Series, it was groundbreaking. What it did, it captured a style and tone that was completely different from anything else that we've seen in cartoon at the time.
We call it Dark Deco. Dark Deco world with some computer technology going for it. It's just another dimension of a contemporary world.
In my mind, it was sort of like, what if the 1939 World's Fair had gone on another 60 years or so? And that cool sense of design and stylishness from the Art Deco years was in operation well up until the 90s. That way you could have kind of a rounded look to the cars and a stylish look to the buildings. You could have television and computers, but everything would have a black and white screen. You could believe that Batman could operate in a world that looked like that.
Eric Radomski was the architect of the architecture, so to speak. He was mostly, I think, involved with the backgrounds. One of his ideas was to create the backgrounds on black paper so that people were drawing with lighter materials on this dark surface so that it created a moody atmosphere.
As dark as I can do the show, this is the way I would play it. I'd love to have characters moving in and out of the shadows. At night, you only see elements, you fill in the gaps. Kind of the perfect approach to Gotham City.
In terms of Batman, the Animated Series, the image that pops into my head every time will be the very first thing I ever saw, which is that shadowy figure of Batman standing on the rooftop.
Somewhere along the way, they decided we don't really need a title to this thing. It's Batman.
Nobody was doing anything like that before. And actually incorporating the Warner Brothers logo was really very old world. It was really cool. It made the show feel like it belonged in another time.
And the greatest shot is when Batman just leaps onto one of them, and you don't even see what he did to the guy, but the guy's just out. Everything that you need to know about Batman is in that 30-second opening.
If you look at the main titles, there's no word that tells you it's Batman. We figured anybody in any language would be able to look at it and go, oh, it's Batman.
Bruce was very determined to tell the show as visually as possible, which was a challenge and a very bold direction.
It was kind of, you know, guerrilla cartoon making to a degree, you know, because we were just taking our skills and knowledge that we had accumulated, but at the same time willing to throw the rule book out if we thought that we could get a cool cinematic effect out of it or a good storytelling device.
You know, as a writer, I was always looking for ways I could bring little flourishes or extra value to every scene or every episode. I remember in Heart of Ice, one thing I wrote in the script, you know, it's a cool way to show off Mr. Freeze's powers. He had to get into a building, so he ran over to a fire hydrant, kicked it open with his big old metal boot, and shot his freezing gun into the water coming out, and that acted as this big frozen geyser lifted him up and put him in the building. Freeze! The thought process on Batman was great. Here, he's a character who doesn't talk much, which is as he should be. And I thought the more you can tell stories like that, the better the show is going to be.
You just feel a lot of responsibility about it because he is an institution. He's a special icon to a lot of people. You're not reinventing him. You're building on what he was and has been.
They went back to the core concepts of who Batman is. What was the motivation of the character? What were the things that mattered most to the character?
I've told Bruce and Paul from the beginning that I thought Batman was the real character, and Bruce Wayne is the disguise. That's the face he puts on for the world. Batman is who he is in his heart.
I think there's a lot of different levels to appreciate the character. There's a fun, chummy pal thing with him and Robin that kids can latch onto when they're little. And there's also a dark, tragic aspect of it that as you get older, you start to understand, and it feels more realistic.
I think one of the things I loved about Batman the Animated Series is that you can see the first episode, you can see the 10th episode, you can see the 3rd season, and still walk in as a first-time viewer and feel like it's touching upon everything that you know true to be about Batman and the characters that he fights.
Who are you?
I'm your worst nightmare.
Batman has, by far, the greatest collection of villains in all of comics.
Oops! Looks like we're experiencing technical difficulty. But don't worry, folks. We're still on the air.
So often the Joker has been played as sort of like a harmless clown or a total raving psychotic madman, which actually defeats the purpose of doing the character, because then he becomes totally unsavory.
He had these really demonic, scary eyes and this tooth-filled grin that looked like the Blue Meanies in Yellow Submarine.
With the Joker, I felt we struck a nice balance between the clown and the killer. We also got into his personality a lot and really made him kind of a scary character. And he was a character that you didn't get bored with seeing.
Sherlock Holmes has his Professor Moriarty. Batman has his Joker. That's why the Joker's endured for so long. Most people would just go out and commit the crime. He likes to announce that he's going to do things and challenge you to stop him.
It is to laugh, huh, Mr. J?
Harley Quinn, yeah, my favorite.
Hear, hear!
Paul was right in this episode where he just kind of had this weird idea. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be fun if one of the Joker's henchmen was a hench girl?
And then I just made her kind of a screwball who would say things with a goofy attitude, yet when the Joker called on her to pull a trigger, she could do it.
Harley Quinn was such a big hit. I mean, they've made toys and statues. They've incorporated her into the comic books. She has her own series. You know, I think Harley Quinn is a great foil for Joker.
I'm not an actor anymore. I'm not even a man.
I love the visuals of Clayface, and they did a terrific job with him. From being an actor to being this monster that can look like anybody, Clayface was really great.
All that dripping and all that, oh my gosh. It was a lot of hard work.
The transformation effects that they did on the Clayface character, they even went beyond what we had actually put on the board. I mean, we actually tried to throw in every trick we could think of at the time on how to make the shape-shifting look great. You know, they would have the head like, spin up and rotate and then morph into something else. To this day, that really stands out as like a real stellar piece of animation in Warner Brothers animation history.
Don't bother to adjust the picture. For the next 5 minutes, I'm in control.